My brother called from the hospital. He was in my car. I need to tell someone what happened to me 3 days ago. I haven't slept since. I can't close my eyes without seeing it, without seeing him sitting in my car, staring through the windshield at nothing. At everything. Let me start from the beginning. My brother Nathan and I haven't spoken in 17 years. 17 years. That's longer than most marriages. Longer than some people's entire childhoods. When I say those words out loud, they don't feel real. 17 years of silence between two people who once shared bunk beds, who used to build forts out of couch cushions and pretend the living room carpet was lava. Two brothers who once knew every single thing about each other. And then, nothing. Nathan left the day he turned 18. I remember it clearly because our mother had baked a cake. Chocolate with vanilla frosting, his favorite. She'd set it on the kitchen counter that morning, and by the time we came downstairs for the little celebration she'd planned, Nathan was already gone. His room was empty. Not cleaned out, not packed up methodically, just emptied. Like he'd thrown everything he could carry into a bag and walked out the front door while the rest of us were sleeping. He left a note. One sentence. Don't look for me. My parents never explained it. Not really. My mother would get this look on her face whenever his name came up, this tight, wounded expression, like someone had pressed a thumb into a bruise. My father would just shake his head and say Nathan had problems. That he was troubled. That some people couldn't be helped. I was 14 when he left. Old enough to understand that something was deeply wrong, but young enough to believe my parents when they told me Nathan had simply chosen to leave. That he was ungrateful. That he was angry at the world and there was nothing any of us could have done. I believed them for a long time. Years passed. I graduated high school. Went to college. Got a degree in accounting, which is exactly as exciting as it sounds. Met my wife at a friend's barbecue. Got married. Bought a house about 40 minutes from the town where I grew up. Had a life. A normal, ordinary, blessedly boring life. And through all of it, there was this Nathan-shaped hole in the background. This empty space at every Thanksgiving table, every Christmas morning. My mother would sometimes set an extra place at dinner, and then catch herself, and quietly remove it. My father pretended Nathan had never existed at all. I tried to find him once, when I was 22. I searched online, checked social media, even called a few of the friends he'd had in high school. Nobody knew anything. It was like he'd stepped off the edge of the earth. Our father died in 2019. Lung cancer. He went fast, diagnosed in September, gone by November. I handled the funeral arrangements because my mother couldn't. She was a wreck. She kept asking me if I thought Nathan would come. If somehow he'd hear about it and show up. He didn't. My mother died this past January. It was her heart. She'd been declining for a while, the grief of losing my father, the loneliness, the way old age just strips everything away from you piece by piece. I was with her at the end. She squeezed my hand and said one word before she went. Nathan. I don't know what made me try again. Maybe it was hearing his name on her lips like that, like a prayer or a confession. Maybe it was the fact that I was now the only one left, the last person alive who remembered building those couch cushion forts. But 2 weeks after the funeral, I sat down at my computer and I searched for him again. And this time, I found him. He was living in Tucson, Arizona. He had a small apartment. He worked part-time at a hardware store. He had a phone number listed on a public directory. Just like that. After 17 years, he was right there, a 10-digit number on my screen. I stared at that number for 3 days before I called it. The phone rang 4 times. I was about to hang up. Part of me wanted to hang up, wanted to preserve the mystery, wanted to keep Nathan as this abstract concept rather than a real person with a voice and opinions and whatever reasons he'd had for disappearing. Then he answered. Hello? His voice was different. Deeper. Rougher. Like gravel had been poured over the vocal cords I remembered. But underneath all of that, underneath the years and the distance and the damage, it was Nathan. I knew it the way you know your own heartbeat. Nathan, I said. It's Daniel. The silence that followed lasted maybe 5 seconds. It felt like 5 hours. Danny, he whispered. And then he started crying. We talked for 2 hours that first call. Careful at first, circling each other like animals that had forgotten whether they were predators or prey. He asked about Mom. I told him. He went quiet for a long time, and when he came back, his voice was flat in a way that scared me. Good, he said. And then immediately, I'm sorry. I don't mean that. I don't know what I mean. I didn't press him. Not then. We started talking regularly after that. Every few days at first, then almost every day. It was like rediscovering a language I'd forgotten, the rhythms of his speech, the way he'd trail off mid-sentence when he was thinking, the dry little laugh he did when something was funny but also sad. It was during our 3rd week of calls that he told me the truth. He asked if we could do a video call. I said sure. When the camera connected, I almost didn't recognize him. He was 42, only 3 years older than me, but he looked 60. His face was gaunt, the skin pulled tight over cheekbones that jutted out like shelf brackets. His eyes were sunken, ringed with dark circles so deep they looked like bruises. His hair was mostly gone on top, and what remained was gray, not silver gray, but the dull, lifeless gray of old newspaper. I know, he said, reading my expression. I look like hell. You look fine, I lied. Danny. I need to tell you something. And it's going to change the way you see everything. The way you see Mom and Dad. The way you see our childhood. And I need you to just listen. Can you do that? I said I could. And then he told me. It didn't start right away, he said. For the first few years, things were normal. Or close enough. But something shifted when he was around 7 or 8. Our parents, the people who tucked me in at night, who read me bedtime stories, who packed my lunch with little notes that said, "Have a great day, champ." Those same people were hurting Nathan behind closed doors. It started with food. They would withhold meals as punishment. Not for anything specific, not for misbehaving or breaking rules. Just because. Because Nathan had looked at our father the wrong way at dinner. Because he'd been too loud coming down the stairs. Because he existed in a way that seemed to irritate them, the way a splinter irritates the skin. Then it escalated. The belt came next. Our father had this thick leather belt with a brass buckle. I remembered it hanging in the closet, and a chill went through me as Nathan described it because I could see it perfectly, that heavy brown strap coiled on the hook like a sleeping snake. Nathan said the buckle left scars. He turned on the video and angled the camera, lifting the back of his shirt. I saw them. Lines. Raised, white, knotted lines crisscrossing his back like a road map to somewhere terrible. Some of them were thin and faded. Others were thick, ropey, the kind of scars that meant the skin had been split open and left a heel on its own. I felt my stomach turn over. I felt the room tilt. "Danny," he said. "There's more." The choking started when he was 10. Our mother, the woman who baked chocolate cakes and set extra places at the dinner table, would grab Nathan by the throat when our father wasn't home. She'd squeeze until his vision went spotty, until he felt his consciousness start to slip, and then she'd let go. She'd smooth his hair. She'd tell him she was sorry. She'd tell him she loved him. And then she'd do it again the next week. I wanted to stop him. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was misremembering, that our parents weren't capable of this. But I looked at his face on that screen, ravaged, hollow, ancient at 42, and I knew. I knew the way you know gravity exists. Not because someone told you, but because you can feel it pulling everything down. He held up his left hand. His ring finger. The top joint was missing. "Dad did this when I was 15, he said. His voice was steady now, almost clinical, like he was reading a report about someone else's life. I broke a window playing ball in the backyard. He took me to the garage. He used the pruning shears. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. I just sat there in my home office, in my safe and normal house, staring at my brother's mutilated hand through a laptop screen, and the world I'd grown up in the warm, comfortable, loving world of bedtime stories and packed lunches, crumbled around me like wet cardboard. They told the hospital it was a lawn mower accident, Nathan said. And the hospital believed them. Because of course they did. Mom and Dad were so nice. So normal. Pillars of the community. He said those last words like they tasted rotten. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "You were a kid, Danny. And they never touched you. I don't know why, maybe one was enough for them. Maybe you were the good one and I was the one they needed to break. I don't know. But I couldn't put that on you. And when I left, I couldn't come back. Every time I thought about coming back, I saw that house. That garage. Those pruning shears." He paused. "But I'm telling you now because I'm sick, Danny. And I want to see you before it gets worse." His heart. That's what was failing. Years of stress, years of cortisol flooding his system from the trauma, years of not taking care of himself, because when you grow up being told you're worthless, you tend to believe it. His doctor had told him his heart was operating at about 30% capacity. He was on a waiting list for more tests, more treatments, but things weren't looking good. He wanted to come visit me. He wanted to see me in person for the first time in nearly 2 decades. And he wanted to see the house. That part surprised me. "The house?" I said. "Why would you want to go back there?" "I need to," he said. "I can't explain it. I just need to stand in front of it. I need to see it as an adult and prove to myself that it's just a house. Just walls and a roof. Not a prison. Not a torture chamber. Just a building." I understood that. Or I thought I did. The house was still standing. Our parents had never sold it, and after my mother's death, it had passed to me. I hadn't done anything with it yet, hadn't cleaned it out, hadn't listed it, hadn't even gone inside. It just sat there, empty, at the end of Maple Street, waiting. We set a date. He'd fly in on a Thursday. I'd pick him up at the airport. We'd have dinner, spend some time together, and then whenever he was ready, we'd drive out to the house. I counted the days. Thursday came. I drove to the airport with my hands tight on the wheel, my pulse doing something irregular in my throat. I parked in the cell phone lot first, then moved to arrivals when his flight status changed to landed. I waited at the curb, engine running, scanning every face that came through the sliding glass doors. And then I saw him. He was thinner than he'd looked on camera, which shouldn't have been possible but was. He moved slowly, carefully, like a man walking on ice. He had a single duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and it seemed to weigh him down, bending him slightly to the left. He was wearing a flannel shirt that was too big for him and jeans that bunched around shoes that had seen better days. He looked like a man who had been slowly taken apart over the course of 42 years and only partially reassembled. I got out of the car. We stood there, 3 feet apart, looking at each other. 17 years collapsed into the space between us, and for a moment, I could see the kid he'd been, the gap-toothed grin, the messy hair, the way he used to challenge me to races down the hallway. "Danny," he said. I hugged him. I felt his bones through his shirt. He smelled like airport coffee and something medicinal, something sterile, like he'd recently been in a hospital and the smell had followed him out. "Let's go home," I said. We drove. The airport is about an hour from my house, and for the first 20 minutes, we barely talked. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was more like we were both adjusting to the physical reality of being in the same space again. The video calls were one thing. Pixels on a screen, a voice through a speaker. This was different. This was his breathing in the seat next to me. This was his hand resting on his knee, and every time I glanced over, I could see it, the missing joint on his ring finger, the clean, flat stump where it ended. "The house," he said, about halfway through the drive. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking out the passenger window at the flat stretch of highway, the winter bare trees, the gray sky pressing down like a lid. "Can we go today?" "Today? You just got off a plane, Nathan. You look exhausted. Let's get you settled first." Federal rested. "We can go tomorrow, or the day after." "I'd rather go today," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I'd been waiting 17 years, Danny. I don't want to wait anymore." Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. Not the words themselves, they made sense. Of course, a man who'd been running from his childhood would want to face it as soon as possible. But there was an urgency underneath, a hunger almost, that didn't feel like closure. It felt like something else entirely. "Okay," I said. "But let me stop at my place first. I need to grab the keys to the old house, and my wife will want to meet you." He nodded. He didn't say anything else for the rest of the drive. We pulled into my driveway around 2 in the afternoon. My house is a modest split level in a quiet subdivision, nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I've always felt safe here. I turned off the engine and looked at Nathan. "Come inside," I said. "I'll make some coffee." "I'll wait here," he said. "If that's okay. I'm a little overwhelmed. Just need a few minutes." I understood. Or told myself I did. 17 years of isolation, 17 years of flinching at shadows and sleeping with one eye open. Of course, being in someone's home might feel like too much. "Take your time," I said. "I'll be quick." I got out of the car and walked toward the house. At the door, I turned back. Nathan was sitting exactly where I'd left him, seatbelt still on, hands in his lap, staring straight ahead through the windshield. He wasn't looking at anything. His face was completely expressionless. I went inside. My wife was in the kitchen. I told her Nathan was here but needed a minute. She started putting together a plate of food, sandwich, some fruit, a glass of water. She's good like that. Always thinking about what people need. I went to the junk drawer where I kept the keys to the old house. They were on a ring with a faded keychain, a little plastic globe from some vacation we'd taken as kids. I held it in my hand and felt the weight of it, the impossibility of everything that had happened in the years since that trip. Then my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. It was a Tucson area code, 520. I almost didn't answer. But something made me swipe the screen, some instinct, some pull. Hello? Danny. The voice was thin, stretched, like a wire about to snap. Danny, it's Nathan. My blood went cold. I want you to understand what happened in my body in that moment. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was confusion so profound that it felt physical, like the floor had tilted. 30 degrees and I was sliding toward a wall that wasn't there anymore. Because the voice on the phone was Nathan's. Not similar to Nathan's. Not a reasonable facsimile. It was Nathan's voice, the same gravel, the same cadence, the same way he said my name with the emphasis on the second syllable. Nathan? I said. Where are you calling from? I'm at St. Mary's, he said. The hospital. Danny, I didn't get on the plane. I couldn't. My chest, something happened this morning. I collapsed at my apartment. The neighbors called 911. The kitchen felt very small. The light felt very bright. My wife looked up from the sandwich she was making, saw my face, and stopped moving. That's not, Nathan, you're here. You're in my car. I just picked you up from the airport. Silence on the line. Not the comfortable silence of two brothers adjusting to each other's presence. This was the silence of something cracking. Danny. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've been trying to call you for 3 hours. It kept going to voicemail. I've been lying here in this bed, and I couldn't reach you, and I didn't know if I was going to. He broke off. I heard him breathing. Ragged, wet breathing, the kind that sounds like it's being pulled through water. I'm having a heart attack, Danny. They're saying it's bad. They said, the doctor said, Nathan, stop. Just stop for a second. My voice was shaking. My hands were shaking. Everything was shaking. If you're in a hospital in Tucson, then who is in my car? A sound came through the phone that I will never forget as long as I live. It was Nathan crying, not the way he'd cried when I first called him, not the cathartic tears of reconnection. This was the sound of absolute terror, the sound of a man who understood something so horrible that his body could only respond with this raw, animal keening. Danny, listen to me. His voice was breaking apart. You can't take him back. Do you understand me? Whatever it is, whatever is sitting in your car, you cannot take it back to that house. What are you talking about? Nathan, what? He can't go back. It can't go back. Danny, please. Promise me. Don't take it to the house. Don't let it inside. Nathan, you're not making sense. Who is? There was a heavy thud. The sound of something falling, a body, a phone, both. Then voices in the background, muffled, urgent. A woman saying get the cart. A man shouting code blue, room 414. The mechanical scream of a flatline alarm. Nathan? I said. Nathan? The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing, listening to the absence of my brother's voice. My wife was asking me what was wrong, her hands on my arm, her voice rising, but I couldn't hear her. I could only hear the echo of what Nathan had said. You can't take him back. Whatever is sitting in your car. He can't go back. I walked to the front window. My car was in the driveway. The engine was off. The windows were up. And Nathan, the thing I'd picked up at the airport, the thing I'd hugged, the thing whose bones I'd felt through its flannel shirt, was sitting in the passenger seat exactly where I'd left it. Seat belt on. Hands in lap. It was staring straight ahead. Not at the house. Not at the street. At nothing. At that fixed middle distance that isn't really a place at all. But as I watched, standing at my window with my dead phone in my hand, its head began to turn. Slowly. So slowly. Until it was looking directly at me. And it smiled. Not the way a person smiles. Not with recognition or warmth or humor. It was a mechanical thing, a pulling back of the lips over teeth that were too even, too white, too perfect. The kind of smile you'd get if you described the concept of smiling to something that had never done it before and asked it to try. I stumbled back from the window. My wife caught me. She was saying my name over and over, "Daniel, Daniel, what is going on? You're scaring me." And I couldn't answer because my mouth had gone dry, because my brain was trying to process something it had no framework for. I looked at the phone in my hand. I called the number back. It rang once, twice, 3 times. A woman answered. St. Mary's Hospital, Cardiology Unit. I need my brother, Nathan. Nathan Reeves. Room 414. He just called me. Sir, are you family? I'm his brother. Is he okay? What happened? A pause. The kind of pause that carries weight. Sir, Mr. Reeves was brought in this morning with a massive cardiac event. He's being stabilized right now. I can't give you more information over the phone, but I strongly recommend you get here as soon as possible. He called me, I said, and I heard how desperate I sounded, how unhinged. He called me 5 minutes ago and he said, Sir, I understand you're upset. Please get here when you can. She hung up. I looked at the window again. The car was empty. No. Not empty. The passenger door was open. I felt something drop in my stomach, something heavy and cold, like a stone falling into a frozen lake. The passenger door was open, and the seat was empty, and wherever that thing had gone, it wasn't in my car anymore. Daniel. My wife's voice, right behind me. Daniel, there's someone at the back door. I don't remember crossing the house. I don't remember walking through the living room, past the couch, past the TV, past the bookshelf with our wedding photos. I just remember being at the kitchen window, looking out the back door, and seeing it. It was standing on my back porch. It looked like Nathan. It wore Nathan's clothes. It had Nathan's gaunt face and Nathan's hollowed eyes and Nathan's gray, lifeless hair. But it was different now. Something had shifted in the minutes since I'd been on the phone. The pretense had slipped. The mask, whatever had been holding it in place, had loosened, and what I was looking at was no longer a convincing copy of my brother. Its proportions were slightly wrong. The arms were too long. Not grotesquely, not in a way you'd notice at a glance, but now that I was really looking, now that I knew, I could see it. The fingers were too thin. The neck was too straight, like a post driven into the ground rather than the organic curve of muscle and bone. And the finger. The ring finger on its left hand. It was whole. Complete. Every joint intact. No scar, no stump, no evidence that a pair of pruning shears had ever touched it. Whatever this thing was, it had gotten almost everything right. The voice. The face. The mannerisms. The story. Every detail Nathan had shared over those weeks of phone calls, the starvation, the belt, the choking, the scars, it knew all of it. It had repeated them to me with Nathan's own cadence, Nathan's own pauses, Nathan's own flat clinical tone. But it didn't know about the finger. Or it did know, and it couldn't replicate the damage. It could wear my brother's face, but it couldn't break itself the way my brother had been broken. It raised its hand, its whole, unblemished hand, and knocked on the back door. 3 slow knocks. "Danny." Its voice was muffled by the glass. "Danny, let me in. I thought we were going to the house." The house. It kept coming back to the house. Not me, not the reunion, not the 17 years of silence. The house. The house on Maple Street where my parents had done unspeakable things to a child who trusted them. The house that I had inherited and hadn't entered. What was in that house? What was waiting there? And what would happen if this thing, this passenger, this imposter, this shape wearing my brother like a suit, made it inside? "Danny, please." It tilted its head. The motion was wrong, too smooth, too mechanical, like a security camera panning on a track. "I've been waiting so long. I just need to go back. You promised. You said we could go today." I looked at its hands. Both of them. 10 perfect fingers. No scars on the knuckles, no evidence of a life lived in pain. These weren't the hands of a man who'd been starved and beaten and mutilated. These were the hands of something else, something that had studied suffering from the outside and decided to wear it like a costume. My wife was behind me. I could feel her there, her hand on my shoulder, her breath on my neck. "Don't open the door," I said. "Daniel, what is going on? Who is that?" "That's not Nathan." It stopped knocking. It stopped smiling. It just stood there, its face inches from the glass, its breath not fogging the surface because I realized with a sickening lurch it wasn't breathing. Its chest wasn't moving. Its nostrils weren't flaring. It was perfectly, impossibly still, like a photograph of a man standing on my porch. "The house, Danny," it said, and now its voice had changed too. The gravel was gone. The warmth was gone. What was left was something flat and ancient and patient. A voice like stone. Like the voice of the house itself, reaching through this thing to speak to me. I need to go back. I pulled the curtain. I called the hospital again. It took 40 minutes to get any real information. Nathan, the real Nathan, my actual brother, the man whose body carried the map of our parents' cruelty, was alive. Barely. He'd been resuscitated. He was in the ICU, intubated, sedated. The doctors said the next 24 hours would be critical. The nurse I spoke with said something that stopped me cold. He was very agitated before the second arrest, she said. He kept saying someone's name. Daniel. He kept saying, "Don't let him go to the house. Don't let it in." Does that mean anything to you? I checked the back porch. It was gone. I checked the car. Empty. The passenger door was closed now, as if it had never been opened. The seat belt was retracted. There was no impression in the seat, no warmth from a body, no evidence that anyone had ever sat there at all. But Nathan's duffel bag was still in my trunk. Or rather, a duffel bag was still in my trunk. I didn't open it. I didn't want to know what was inside. I didn't want to know what kind of props this thing had brought along to sell its performance. I locked every door. Every window. I pulled every curtain. My wife and I sat in the living room with the lights on, and I told her everything. The phone calls with Nathan. The video calls. The scars. The finger. The airport. The thing that had been sitting in my car wearing my brother's ruined face. She didn't say I was crazy. She just held my hand and looked at the curtains and listened. That was 3 days ago. Nathan is still in the hospital. He's stable now, they downgraded him from critical to serious. I've been calling every day. He can't talk yet, but the nurses say he's responsive, that he squeezes their hands when they ask him questions. The thing hasn't come back. Not to my house, anyway. But I drove past the old place on Maple Street yesterday. I didn't plan to. I was running errands, and the route took me near the old neighborhood, and before I could stop myself, I was turning down that street, pulling up to the curb in front of the house where I grew up. The house was dark. The lawn was dead. The paint was peeling in long, curling strips that made this siding look like it was shedding its skin. And in the front window, the window of the room that used to be Nathan's bedroom, I saw a shape. A silhouette. Standing perfectly still. Looking out. I didn't stop the car. I pressed the accelerator and I drove and I didn't look back. But in my rearview mirror, just before I turned the corner, I saw the front door of the house begin to open. I don't know what that thing is. I don't know if it's something my parents invited in, or something they created, or something that grew in the cracks between the violence and the silence and the lies. I don't know if the terrible things they did to Nathan fed it, nourished it, called it into being the way blood in the water calls a shark. I don't know why it looks like my brother. I don't know how it knew the stories, the scars, the specific details of a childhood that was torn apart behind closed doors. Maybe it was there the whole time. Maybe it watched from the corners of that house while my parents did what they did, and it learned Nathan's face the way a predator learns the patterns of its prey. I don't know why it wants to go back to the house. But Nathan knew. In his hospital bed, with his heart failing, with the machines keeping him alive, Nathan knew something about that house, about what was inside it, and he spent his last conscious moments trying to warn me. You can't take him back. He can't go back. I've called a locksmith. I've changed the locks on the old house. I've called a contractor about boarding up the windows. I'm doing everything I can to keep that place sealed. But last night, around 3 in the morning, my phone rang. Tucson area code. I almost answered. My hand was reaching for it before I caught myself. Because Nathan is sedated. Nathan is intubated. Nathan can't make phone calls. The phone rang 11 times and then stopped. This morning, I checked my voicemail. One new message. 47 seconds long. I haven't listened to it yet. I'm afraid of what I'll hear. I'm afraid it will be Nathan's voice, that perfect copy, that hollow echo, asking me, one more time, with that patient, ancient, terrible calm, Danny. When are we going to the house? I keep thinking about what Nathan said on that first video call, when he described what our parents did to him. He said something I dismissed at the time, something I thought was just trauma speaking. He said, it was like they were feeding something, Danny. Like the pain wasn't the point. Like the pain was fuel. I didn't understand then. I'm starting to understand now. Whatever lived in that house, whatever my parents served with their cruelty, it's still hungry. And it's wearing my brother's face to get what it needs. If Nathan makes it, when Nathan makes it, I'll fly to Tucson. I'll sit by his bed. I'll hold his hand, the one with the missing finger joint, and I'll ask him what he knows. What he saw in that house that made him run so far and so fast that it took 17 years and a dying heart to bring him back into my life. And I'll ask him the question that keeps me up at night, the question that crawls through my thoughts like something alive. If our parents were feeding it, what happens now that they're gone? What happens when it gets hungry enough to come find food on its own? I looked out my window just now. There's a car parked across the street. Engine off. Lights off. I can't see who's inside. But I think it's waiting. I think it's been waiting for a very long time. And I think it's patient.